Okay, so have you ever bought something expensive, maybe a new phone you didn't really need, and then you find yourself telling everyone how amazing its camera is, how fast it is?
Oh, definitely. Or, you start a health kick on Monday morning,
Right.
and by Monday evening, you've polished off a whole pint of ice cream.
Been there. And you immediately think, oh, I had such a stressful day, I deserve this. We all do that, right? That little voice making excuses.
It is, but it's actually more than just making excuses, that little voice, that feeling. You're tapping into something pretty fundamental in psychology. It's this kind of internal friction.
Friction, okay.
Yeah, a friction our brains are constantly trying to smooth over. It's what we call cognitive dissonance.
Huh. So when you say mental friction, is that like a conscious thing? Are we choosing to rationalize, or is it deeper? Because honestly, it feels pretty automatic sometimes.
That's a really great point, and yeah, it's often not conscious at all. It's more like an automatic, almost knee-jerk reaction.
Hmm.
Our brains are sort of wired for what psychologists call cognitive consistency.
Consistency. Okay.
Exactly. And to really get what that means and understand this like invisible force shaping our decisions,
Okay.
we kind of have to go back to where the idea first came from.
All right.
So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack this mental friction. We'll look at its really groundbreaking origins, see how it secretly guides so much of what we do, day-to-day shopping, relationships, you name it.
And hopefully figure out how understanding it can help us make better choices, more deliberate ones.
Precisely. Think of it like, finally getting the instruction manual for a really key part of your own operating system.
Okay, I like that. An instruction manual for the brain. So where does this story start? You mentioned the origins.
It starts back in the 1950s,
Yeah.
Stanford University. There's a social psychologist there named Leon Festinger,
Festinger, right?
and he comes up with this experiment that, well, honestly sounds incredibly boring, like
Mm.
mind-numbingly dull.
Okay, tell me more. What did people have to do?
Picture this. You sit down, and for a whole hour, you have to do these really tedious tasks. The classic one involved turning dozens of wooden pegs on a board, like a quarter turn, then another quarter turn over and over again.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds excruciatingly dull.
Exactly, designed to be boring. But the real experiment, the clever part, wasn't the task itself.
It was what happened after the hour of pig turning.
Precisely. After the hour was up, Fessinger would come in and ask the participant a slightly weird favor. He'd say, hey, the next person waiting is about to do this. Could you tell them it was actually incredibly fun and exciting?
So he asked them to lie, straight up.
Yep. Just tell the next person the boring task was great fun. And crucially, he offered a reward for telling this little white lie.
Okay, how much?
Well, that was the key variable. Some students were offered $20. Now remember, this is the 50s, so that's like over $200 today. A pretty decent chunk of change.
Definitely worth telling a small fib for, you might think.
You might, but then another group, they were offered just one single dollar, a really paltry amount even then.
$1 versus 20, big difference.
Huge. And after they told the lie or didn't, if they refused, a researcher, supposedly separate from the main experiment, would interview them and ask them, among other things, how much they personally had actually enjoyed the peg-turning task.
Ah, okay. So now we get to see if telling the lie changed their own opinion. What happened?
The results were, well, they really turned heads. They were completely counterintuitive. The students got paid the $20.
Yeah.
They told a lie, took the money, and then afterwards, when asked, they said, nah, the task was super dull, just like you'd expect.
Right, because the $20 was an easy justification.
Oh, yeah.
I lied, but hey, they paid me well for it. No internal conflict.
Exactly. The money explained the lie. Dissonance resolved. But the students who were paid only $1.
What about them? This is the interesting group, I guess.
This is where it gets wild. They were the ones who later rated the peg-turning task as genuinely quite enjoyable, significantly more enjoyable than the $20 group.
Wait, really? The ones paid less actually convinced themselves it was fun.
That's the core finding. See, a single dollar just wasn't enough external justification to lie. It creates this uncomfortable clash inside. I know that task was boring, but I just told someone it was fun, and I only did it for $1. That doesn't make sense.
So their brain had to fix that inconsistency somehow.
Precisely. Since they couldn't easily take back the lie, the easier path was to change their internal belief. They'd essentially rationalize, well, actually, you know what? It wasn't that bad. Kind of interesting, really. They change their memory, their feeling about the task, to make their actions make sense.
Wow, okay, that is counterintuitive. So the less justification you have for doing something that clashes with your beliefs, the more likely you are to change your beliefs to match the action.
That's the essence of it. And this led Festinger in his 1957 book, A Theory of Cognitive Dissonance, to this really fundamental insight about us,
Which is,
that we're not primarily rational creatures, always driven by pure logic. We are, perhaps more fundamentally, rationalizing creatures. Our minds are constantly working to make our world feel consistent, to make our actions align with our beliefs, even if it means, well, bending reality a bit.
so cognitive dissonance at its heart is that uncomfortable feeling when things just don't add up, like when my actions don't match my values.
Exactly. It's the mental discomfort, maybe guilt, unease, tension you feel when you hold two contradictory ideas, beliefs, or values, or when your behavior clashes with one of those core beliefs. That's
Yeah.
the friction.
Okay, I like the idea of thinking about it like a musical instrument. Our beliefs, our values, our actions, they're like strings. When they all align, you get harmony, right? Consistent music.
That's an analogy.
But when you do something that goes against a core belief, say, you really value honesty, but you tell that lie for Festinger, it's like plucking two strings that are just horribly out of tune together. It creates this jarring, unpleasant sound in your head.
That's a perfect way to put it. That jarring sound is the dissonance. And our brains are basically hardwired to hate that feeling. We crave consistency. So that discomfort becomes this really powerful motivator.
A motivator to do what? To stop the unpleasant noise?
Exactly. To resolve the conflict, restore the harmony, get back in tune, we need to scratch that mental itch, essentially.
Okay, so if our brains hate this dissonance, this out-of-tune feeling, how do we fix it? How do we scratch the itch? You mentioned Festinger students change their beliefs. Is that the only way?
No, generally, when we're faced with that uncomfortable dissonance, we tend to take one of about three main paths to find relief. Let's use a classic example. Imagine a smoker who knows deep down that smoking is really bad for their health. That creates dissonance, right? Belief, smoking is dangerous. Behavior, I smoke.
Right, clear conflict. So what's path number one?
Path one is often the most direct, but also frequently the hardest, is to change the behavior.
So the smoker just quits smoking.
Exactly. Action now aligns with the belief, smoking is bad so I don't smoke. Dissonance gone, harmony restored.
But, yeah, easier said than done. Quitting smoking, changing habits that take serious effort, willpower.
Immense effort, which is why it's often not the path people take, even if it seems the most logical. So if changing the behavior feels too hard, what's next?
What's path two?
Path two is often much easier psychologically speaking.
Yeah.
You change the contradictory belief or cognition.
Ah, okay. So instead of changing the smoking, you change the belief about the smoking being dangerous.
Precisely. You start to downplay the risk. You might tell yourself, the research isn't really conclusive, or, the classic, my grandpa smoked a pack a day and lived to be 95.
Right, or it's not as bad as stress, or lots of things are risky, I still drive my car.
Exactly. You find ways to minimize the perceived danger of the behavior. You water down that belief, smoking isn't that dangerous, so it doesn't clash so harshly with the action, I smoke.
Makes sense. So you can change the behavior or change the belief about the behavior. What's the third way our brains can sort of wiggle out of this discomfort?
The third path is a bit more subtle. You don't necessarily change the core belief or the behavior, but you add new beliefs or cognitions to justify or outweigh the behavior.
Okay, how does that work for the smoker?
They might add new thoughts that rationalize the smoking. Like, okay, maybe smoking is risky, but it really helps me manage my stress, and stress is a killer too.
Okay. Or it helps me stay thin, and being overweight is also a health risk.
Exactly. Or maybe, look, I only smoke when I'm out with friends. It's a really important part of my social life, my connections. These new beliefs don't make smoking healthy, but they add justifications, counterweights that make the behavior feel more acceptable despite the risks. They sort of muffle the dissonance.
So change the action, change the belief, or add new beliefs to justify the action. Wow. Understanding these three paths, it really does feel like getting a kind of secret decoder for why people, including ourselves, do the things we do.
It absolutely is. Once you start looking for these patterns, you see them everywhere. It drives so much, from why we buy things to how we stick with difficult choices.
Like buyer's remorse, is that related? That feeling after you buy something expensive?
Textbook cognitive dissonance. It's often called post-purchase rationalization or buyer's justification. You make a big purchase, a car, a phone, maybe even a house, and then that little doubt creeps in. Did I make the right call? Was it worth all that money? That doubt clashes with the action of having spent the money.
And so your brain jumps in to shut down the doubt.
Exactly. You suddenly find yourself actively seeking out information that confirms your choice. You read all the five-star reviews, you watch glowing YouTube videos about your new gadget, you tell all your friends how amazing it is.
It's basically convincing yourself as much as anyone else that it was the absolute smartest decision you could have possibly made.
Precisely. You need to align your belief, this was a great purchase, with your behavior. I spent a lot of money on this. Then there's another fun one, effort justification.
Effort justification. What's that?
It's this fascinating tendency we have to value something more simply because we put a lot of effort, maybe even pain or embarrassment, into achieving it. It's sometimes called the IKEA effect.
The IKEA effect, because you value that slightly wobbly bookcase you spent all Saturday building, cursing at the instructions.
More than a perfectly fine pre-assembled one that just showed up.
Yeah.
The dissonance comes from thinking, wow, I put so much work into this, but maybe it's not actually that great.
And your brain resolves that by concluding,
It must be great because I worked so hard on it. The effort itself becomes the justification for its value.
that explains a lot, like why people might feel incredibly loyal to a club or group after going through a really difficult initiation process.
Exactly. Or why we sometimes stay in jobs or even relationships that required a huge amount of effort to get into or maintain, even if we're not entirely happy. Admitting all that effort might have been for something mediocre or even bad, that creates too much dissonance.
It's like we need to believe the effort was worthwhile. Okay, what else? I feel like I've heard of something called the Ben Franklin effect. Is that related to?
It is, and it's a brilliant example of manipulating dissonance. The story goes, Ben Franklin wanted to win over a rival legislator who didn't like him.
Okay, so did you do something nice for the guy?
Quite the opposite. He asked the rival for a favor. He asked to borrow a rare and valuable book from the legislator's personal library.
He asked the guy who didn't like him for a favor. That seems risky.
Well, the legislator, perhaps surprised, agreed and lent him the book. Franklin returned it promptly with a thank you note, and afterwards, the legislator was apparently much friendlier and more cooperative towards Franklin.
Why? What happened in the legislator's head?
Dissonance. His brain faced a conflict. I don't really like this Franklin fellow, but I just went out of my way to do him a favor. That doesn't compute.
So his brain had to resolve it.
Right. And the easiest way was to adjust the belief. You know what? Maybe I don't dislike Franklin after all. In fact, I must actually quite like him. Otherwise, why would I have done that nice thing for him? Doing the favor created the need to justify it by increasing his liking for Franklin.
That is kind of genius and a bit manipulative.
A little bit. It shows how our actions can actually shape our attitudes, not just the other way around.
And this connects to something bigger too, doesn't it? Like confirmation bias.
Uh,
Especially in, say, politics or social issues.
Oh, absolutely. It's like confirmation bias amplified by dissonance. When we encounter facts or arguments that directly contradict our deeply held political beliefs or our social worldview, it feels deeply uncomfortable. It creates significant dissonance.
And changing a core belief about the world is hard. Really hard.
Much harder than, say, discrediting the source of the conflicting information. It's psychologically easier to say, oh, that's just fake news, or, while that media outlet is completely biased, than it is to seriously reevaluate a belief that's part of your identity.
So we retreat into echo chambers, places where everyone agrees with us because it feels safer, more comfortable.
Exactly. It reduces the dissonance. Our brains often prioritize that feeling of internal consistency, that psychological comfort, even over objective truth sometimes.
Okay, this is making so much sense, but let's bust a couple of myths quickly. I sometimes hear people equate cognitive dissonance with just being a hypocrite or maybe deliberately lying to yourself. Is that fair?
Not really. While dissonance can certainly lead to behavior that looks hypocritical from the outside, the underlying process is often much deeper and, crucially, often unconscious.
So it's not necessarily a deliberate choice to deceive yourself or others?
Usually not. It's more like an automatic, almost instinctual drive for mental consistency. Think of it less as a moral failing and more as a fundamental feature of how our minds are built, our cognitive architecture, if you will.
Okay. And what about the idea that only people with, like, weak convictions or wishy-washy beliefs experience this?
Oh, definitely not. That's myth number 2. Everyone experiences cognitive dissonance, period. Everyone. In fact, you could argue that people with very strong, very rigid beliefs or moral codes might actually experience more intense dissonance when their actions inevitably fall short of those high standards, which happens to all of us. It's absolutely a universal human experience. Doesn't matter how strong-willed you are.
So it's not going away, it's part of being human, and science is still digging into this, like actually looking inside our heads.
For sure. The study of dissonance is very much alive. Neuroscientists today are using tools like fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, to actually watch what happens in the brain during these moments of mental conflict.
They can see the brain squirming, so to speak.
Sort of. They see increased activity in specific areas. For instance, when we experience that conflict between beliefs and actions, a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, often lights up.
And what does the ACC do?
It's like the brain's error detection system, constantly scanning for conflicts or discrepancies. And that icky feeling you get, that unpleasant gut feeling of dissonance, that's often linked to activity in another area called the insula.
The insula.
Yeah, it's involved in processing negative emotional states, even feelings like disgust. So the discomfort is physically represented in brain activity.
Wow. And what happens when we resolve the dissonance, when we change our belief or justify the action?
What's really fascinating is that studies show resolving dissonance, finding that consistency, again, often leads to increased activity in the brain's reward circuits.
So it actually feels good to resolve the conflict. Like our brain gives us a little reward for tidying up.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Achieving cognitive consistency appears to be intrinsically rewarding for the brain.
That's incredible. So how does understanding this brain activity translate into the real world? Does it have practical uses, maybe in therapy?
Huge implications. Take cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, for example. Therapists can actually use dissonance principles strategically.
Guess so.
Well, imagine a client struggling with very low self-esteem, holding the core belief, I am worthless. A therapist might encourage them to do things that contradict that belief, maybe practice self-care routines, or regularly list their own accomplishments, however small.
So the action of listing accomplishments clashes with the belief of being worthless.
Exactly, it creates dissonance. And over time, performing these actions that contradict the negative belief can help to weaken that I am worthless cognition, nudging the person towards a more balanced and positive self-view. It's using the brain's own drive for consistency in a therapeutic way.
That's really clever. And I guess on the flip side, understanding dissonance must be incredibly valuable for, say, marketers or maybe even the people designing algorithms online.
Oh, absolutely. It's a powerful tool, for better or worse. Marketers and designers understand that they can induce mild dissonance to subtly nudge our behavior.
Nudge us how?
For instance, showing you statistics like 9 out of 10 people like you bought this product, or your friends are all using this service. If you value belonging or being similar to your peers, that creates a subtle dissonance. People like me do this, but I don't.
And that little bit of discomfort pushes you towards buying the product or signing up for the service.
It can. It's a gentle push to resolve the dissonance between your desire to fit in and your current inaction.
Yeah.
It's one of many psychological levers they can pull.
Okay, so let's bring it back home. That expensive gadget we felt we had to defend, or that pint of ice cream we explained away.
Yep.
That powerful urge we feel to justify, to explain ourselves, to kind of smooth over the cracks between what we believe and what we actually do. That's the hallmark, the signature of cognitive dissonance at work.
It really is. You can almost think of it as the constant hum of your mind's engine, always working in the background to maintain a stable, coherent, consistent sense of self. It's why we stick by our choices, sometimes double down on our commitments, even when maybe we shouldn't. We need things to make sense internally.
And it's important to remember this whole process, it isn't inherently good or bad, is it? It just is. It's a basic feature of how our minds operate.
Exactly. It's part of the human operating system.
Yeah.
But the really empowering thing is that once you become aware of it, you gain this incredible new level of self-knowledge.
So you can start to catch yourself in the act.
Precisely. The next time you feel that strong pull to justify something, maybe a choice you made that feels a bit off, or an action that doesn't quite sit right with your values, just pause for a second.
Then ask.
Ask yourself, okay, wait, is this really me talking, thinking this through logically? Or is this maybe my brain just trying to automatically resolve some dissonance here?
That simple question could be pretty revealing, couldn't it?
It can be incredibly powerful. Look, understanding cognitive dissonance isn't going to make it disappear entirely. It's too fundamental. But knowing about it, That hands you the instruction manual we talked about earlier.
And with that manual,
With that manual, you gain the power not just to understand your own mind a little better, but maybe, just maybe, to consciously guide it a bit more often, to make choices that are truly aligned with who you want to be, rather than just reactions driven by the need for comfort.
become a more conscious driver of your own thoughts and actions instead of just letting the rationalizing engine run on autopilot.
That's the goal, isn't it?